Next, I want to talk about the Bruins. All right. The big bad Bruins had themselves an NHL trade deadline that, well, let's face it, didn't live up to expectations, which, quite honestly, I knew that wasn't going to happen. It was a literal pipe dream that we were going to get some of the guys, especially because there were so many players that the Bruins would have to offload in order to free up the cap to bring in some of these big name guys like Noah Hannafin. And I was really bummed and kind of pissed that he went to Vegas. But hey, he hasn't signed an extension yet, so there we go. But the Bruins did make an acquisition for Pat Maroon. He was acquired from the Wild for Luke Toporowski and a conditional 6th rounder, which that to me was interesting because a couple weeks prior, when I was talking about initially who I wanted the Bruins to get, I didn't mention him on the show because I just saw he went to IR, but I wanted Pat Maroon. I wanted Pat Maroon because I love his physicality. He's a tough SOB. He's a cup winner 3 years running like in a row, from 19 to 20 to 21. And so he has that history of going deep into the Stanley Cup. Great leader. But ironically, now he's wearing a Bruins sweater. And it's ironic because after the 2019 Stanley Cup final against the Blues, he went and joined the Lightning, where there was still a lot of scruffs between him and the Bruins, especially Brad Marchand. So the fact that he's wearing a Bruins sweater now is actually hilarious and wild. And you know what? Pat Maroon and the Bruins could even poke fun at themselves, posting on their social media just a funny video of Pat Maroon saying hi to a couple of the teammates and them giving him dirty looks, which, again, hilarious. Like, you have to find that funny. And plus, too, the whole thing with Pat Maroon and Jack Edwards, calling him fat at the start of the season, I think not earlier this season, but last year, it's so true. Like, I'm sorry, Pat. You were fat. You were 200 and I think 65 pounds or something like that. Or, whatever you weighed in, maybe 280. And for your build, your frame, yeah, you came in fat. So I'm like, listen, I can't believe of all guys, Mr. Strong, physical, he's tough. I think he kind of played into the media and how the media was calling out Jack Edwards because, he's fat phobic, this, that, and the other. Like, spare me. When a professional athlete whose job is to be in shape, and I say this about everybody, from baseball, which is the worst, by the way, from baseball all the way to hockey, football, basketball, you name it. If you come in fat and out of shape, then yeah, you deserve every single right to be ridiculed and made fun of, because basically your job is to play your sport and train to be in shape. That's it. That's all you need to do. So when you come in and play-by-play guy calls you fat, sorry, pal, you're fat. And all you have to do about it is burn a few extra calories and stop maybe eating so much, right? So it's actually kind of funny. Like I said, it's ironic that he is now wearing a Bruins sweater, where that play-by-play announcer is now going to call his games when he comes back from his back surgery. And that's the big issue with Pat Maroon, is he probably will not come back onto the ice for the rest of the regular season. And the rest of the regular season, I think, finishes up around mid-April, like April 14th or 15th or something like that. So that's why he's on the IR. And the fact that you don't have your back in order definitely scares me when that is his style. That is his, his presence, is his physicality. But you know what? If he can make it back and we can make a deep playoff run because of him, and he is able to help out for all 4 of the series, hopefully, God willing, then I think it'll obviously be worth it. But as long as we can get through the first round, please, that's all I ask, especially if we have to go up against the friggin' Leafs, who, oh God, talk about insufferable fan base up there. Friggin' Canadians, no. but yeah, no, it's Toronto. As it stands right now, it would be Toronto. And I would hope that we wouldn't have to go 7 games against them, and hope Pat Maroon would come back and knock Austin Matthews and I want to say Matthew Barzal, but he plays for the Islanders. John Tavares is, the guy from the Islanders that the Toronto got, knocked them on their ass. That would be nice. The other guy that the Bruins picked up was Andrew Peeke, defenseman from Columbus, for Jakub Zboril and a 2027 third rounder. Now, I can tell you straight up, when I saw that it was Peeke for Zboril, I was pumped. I was elated because Zboril was the final guy in that first round. I think it was 12, 13, 14 were our draft picks in succession. And that's the draft that I will never stop talking about, because I don't know how you could royally mess that up, going DeBrusk, Senyshyn, and Zboril 1, 2, 3 like that, when you had Matthew Barzal, guy I just mentioned, Sebastian Aho, and like I said, I will never stop talking about it, because that is a massive, massive slight against Don Sweeney. And for all you Don Sweeney guys out there, I give him credit for his trade deadline trades. I do. He is an unbelievable pro scout and a great, trade guy. But the drafting, not so much. So trading Andrew Peeke for Jakub Zboril, I was pumped. I'm like, there we go. Great. 1 for 1. Perfect. But then I saw the 2027 third rounder, and I'm like, really? Why? And the reason why I asked that question is because for his career playing in Columbus, Andrew Peeke is a minus 60 in his NHL career. Minus 60. And as it was last year, was a minus 41. Now, last year, I do want to preface this with the fact that Columbus was the worst team in the Metro Division. They were the worst team in the Eastern Conference, and they were tied for the second worst team in the entire NHL with 59 points. So the only question I have is, okay, how much of him, how much was he responsible for the minus 41 last year and the minus 60 for his career? Now, he's definitely responsible. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not trying to take away his responsibilities so that I can feel better for this trade. It sounds like I'm doing that, but I'm not, because I do genuinely want to know, was Andrew Peeke a halfway decent player? Is he a decent enough player to get that bottom pairing defenseman? Hell, is he a decent enough player where he can play as, one of the top 4 defense pairings, a second pairing? He'll never be a number 1 pairing, no. But is he good enough to be on that second pairing? That's my question. And I'll be honest, like I said, I don't follow Columbus too much. So giving up Zboril and a 27 third rounder is a little suspect, but because it is 4 years in the future, with this draft being the 24 draft, yeah, it's 4 years down the road from today. It is a little questionable to me, but the one thing that I do like about him was, when I looked it up, he was tied for second in block shots last season with 197. Here's a dude ready to lay it all out. He doesn't care if he pulls a Gregory Campbell where the puck goes off his leg and he breaks his leg and will still continue the shift. No, he lays down, sacrificed his body, blocked 197 shots while also dishing out 180 hits, last season. So he can play physical, and I like that. As long as we can protect our goalie, because that seems to be a massive issue for this team, then I'm all good with it. Because a lot of our goalies recently, Swayman and Ullmark, have been nicked a little bit, if you want to call it that, by opponents. So yeah, let's protect our goaltenders, guys, can we, please? So I'll say he seems like a good depth piece. Now he'll make his Bruins debut tomorrow, so I'm excited for that. Lastly, during the trade deadline, it was reported that there were talks of Ullmark going to LA and being a King. Well, turns out that Ullmark blocked it. And unfortunately, the deal that could have been done, that maybe could have helped this team in the future, obviously didn't happen, especially for this season. But it also was reported that the player, Pierre-Luc Dubois, was the guy on that might have been involved. Now, I'm speculating that it was Pierre-Luc Dubois, but it was speculation on another situation where Pierre-Luc Dubois, PLD, excuse me, was available for trading from LA. So if he's available, does that mean the Bruins were going to try to trade Ullmark for him? And if they did, I would hate that deal because his cap hit is absolutely absurd. It is somewhere around the line. Give me 1 second. Oh, here it is. 7 years, $8.5 million. Now, with our salary cap and trading Ullmark, we have like a nickel to our cap before everything went down, before traded for Maroon, before traded for Peak. The Bruins had a nickel to their name in cap space. And so if we were trading Ullmark, who cost $5 million this season, and we were going to bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois, who is on an $8.5 million deal by 7 years, like, no, I don't want him. Granted, he is a center. He is a top 6 center, but he left Columbus on a bad note. Then he got traded from, I want to say it was Winnipeg that he left Columbus for. Winnipeg or Edmonton. And he left them to go to LA, or got traded to LA and signed that big deal with the Kings. And now the Kings are looking to deal him. So if that's the case, if that was the swing there, then I am totally against it. But if you're going to tell me that they were going to trade for, I don't know, Moore or Kempe, like, then I'd be okay with that. Or Kylev, however you say his name, I'd be okay with that. But overall, nothing happened. Ullmark is still on the team, and he showed that he wants to still be on here because he dominated against the Pittsburgh Penguins, making 38 saves on 39 shot attempts, earning the #1 star of the game. And not for nothing, I don't care if I'm sitting here saying that I wanted Ullmark traded at the deadline, because you know what? I did. I also wanted a good deal for him as well. So because he didn't get traded doesn't mean that I can't be happy about it, or can't be, mad about it. But making 38 saves on 39 shot attempts, earning the #1 star against the Pittsburgh Penguins the day after the whole trade deadline, you know what? Yeah, that's good, because I love beating the Pittsburgh Penguins, especially since John Henry bought the friggin' team. So yeah, so John Henry, eat one, because the Bruins own your ass. That's right. And I love it. I always love beating John Henry in the Pittsburgh Penguins, let me tell you. But yeah, it was kind of interesting, and one of those situations where I definitely wanted Ullmark traded. I also want to get a good deal out of him because he was the Vezina winner last year. He's still a very good goaltender, but if we could have used Ullmark and DeBrusk in a trade that would have swung for Hannafin or somebody else, or Troy Terry out of Anaheim, I don't know, somebody like that, then sure, I would have been all for it. But it didn't happen. And so, in typical Bruins fashion, they dominated John Henry's Pittsburgh Penguins. Thank you. But then did an absolute no-show against the Blues. It was an absolutely disgusting effort. And while the Bruins did outshoot the Blues, I mean, the Bees weren't on the same page. They seemed to be riding high off that victory. And they need to get their act together. Like this, that's why I wanted a big move, like a big shakeup with this team, because they do this stuff all the friggin' time. And I'm sure that they're going to compete and try hard once the playoffs roll around. And I'm hoping that they're not doing this because of what happened last year, winning every game practically, then blowing it in the first round. But now that they kept Ullmark and Swayman, the playoffs are going to be a hell of a lot more interesting, because if Swayman starts game one and shuts out whoever we play, let's say it's the Leafs, shuts out the Leafs, are they going to roll Ullmark out for game two? And why would they do that, right? Why would they do that if something like that happened? And then if they do and they lose, that's why, in my opinion, they needed to get rid of Ullmark. They needed to trade him, because we need to see what Swayman has, and we need to see what the young kids have in Providence. This kid, Brandon Boosie, is supposed to be like this mammoth of a guy, and yeah, I want to see what he has. At least in the last few games of regular season, lock a playoff spot up. You're not that far off. So do that. And as I mentioned earlier with Andrew Peeke, he's making his debut tomorrow night at the Bell Center against Montreal. And not for nothing, in my opinion, these guys better bring their friggin' A game up in Montreal, because I hate Montreal. I'm not a fan of the Canadiens. The Canadiens, to me, are like the Yankees to my Red Sox fandom. So, yeah, I can't stand the Canadiens, whether they're good or whether they're bad. It's always fun when both teams are good. But even when the Bruins are good and the Canadiens suck, it's still fun to just pound on them. And I'm sure they said the same thing for about 100 years now, which, not fun. And by the way, the Canadiens got so good because they cheated. They had a loophole in the drafting way, way back in the day. That's how they got all the good players. But that's a story for a different day.